Hi everybody, MichaelBtheGameGenie here, and on today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Dragon's Lair 3/4 scale home arcade from Arcade1Up. Lead on adventurer, your quest awaits. So that's right guys, today we're going to be taking a look at easily my most anticipated cabinet of 2022, the iconic arcade classic Dragon's Lair, recreated in the 3/4 scale by Arcade1Up. This cabinet took forever to come out as it released almost a year after its initial announcement due to some necessary changes with the secondary screen. This was a direct-to-consumer release from Arcade1Up in the US, but here in Canada we were lucky enough to have it at retail through The Brick. And I want to say a huge thank you to The Brick for providing me with this cabinet for the purpose of this review. Now that Dragon's Lair is in my home arcade and I've had a chance to test it out, let's see if I am happy with the final product, and is this a cabinet you should be interested in. And there it is in all its 3/4 scale glory, the new Arcade1Up Dragon's Lair, and it's beautiful. Dragon's Lair was always a special attraction in the arcade growing up, and after seeing it in Stranger Things Season 2, I knew this was one machine I would love to have in my house. Arcade1Up can sometimes really put in the extra effort on the look and presentation of a classic arcade cabinet and just knock it out of the park, and luckily that is what they have done here. The arcade accurate form factor is so important, and luckily they made sure the shape is identical to the full-size machine. The side panel art is beautiful, and while simplistic and only taking up a portion of the side panel, is accurate to the original and nails those nostalgia vibes. One point I want to bring up is the art is high res and we do not see any pixelation like we have seen on other Arcade1Up releases in the recent past. My only real critique of the form factor is that I do wish it was a bit taller and more similar in height to Tron from a looks perspective, which would have also helped from a functional perspective, which we will see later in this review. The marquee is one of the standout features of this cabinet, as they have gone the extra step to recreate not just the art, but the unique shape of the original marquee, where it is actually raised out in the middle. While the marquee is raised out, one small critique is that the marquee does seem like it should have been just a little taller, and did seem taller in the initial product renders. Why the marquee is shorter than originally pitched, I do not know, but it still looks great. The marquee has even light distribution and no visible hotspots, but much like all the new marquees from Arcade1Up that use a panel and a separate light source, these do seem a little dimmer than the standard one-piece Arcade1Up marquees. There have also been some comments made about the picture quality of the art on the marquee, mentioning that the picture does look a little grainy. However, Arcade1Up has said this was due to recreating the exact look of the original marquee, and the same grain is visible on that one as well. Overall, I think it's a winner, and kudos to Arcade1Up for making this happen. Moving down the cabinet, we hit the second major win for Arcade1Up here, and the reason the product was in development hell for so long, the alphanumeric display, and this thing is so cool. When this cabinet was originally announced, it wasn't going to come with a secondary screen, but instead a space to fit a cell phone which you would connect somehow that would act as a second screen. Of course, the community revolted against this, and rightfully so Arcade1Up went back to the drawing board and sourced an alphanumeric screen, and the end result is this awesome speaker panel that features the scorekeeping screen in all its glory. The screen is pinpoint accurate to what is happening on screen, and just so important for that overall Dragon's Lair nostalgic feel. It's small features like this that differentiate playing Dragon's Lair on a special cabinet like this, recreating the feeling of the original, or just playing on a multicade. What gets missed on this panel because of the awesomeness of the alphanumeric screen is that the speakers here have speaker grills and look awesome. On top of looking awesome, they produce some of the very best sound I have heard from an Arcade1Up cabinet to date. Seriously, if you ever get a chance, crank up that volume and just listen to how awesome the attract mode sounds. The overall build of this piece is plastic, which may have either been a cost-cutting measure or necessary due to the shape and design. I'm not sure exactly, but it doesn't take away from the build quality or the aesthetic at all. One major concern I had going into this cabinet was the screen quality, as the only cabinets to release before this one were the legacy cabs that featured a questionable TN monitor with poor backlighting that impacted picture quality. I am so happy to report that this screen is a 4x3 IPS BOE 17-inch monitor like we are used to receiving in the 3/4 scale cabs from Arcade1Up, and the picture quality is fantastic. The images on screen are crisp and have perfect lighting from all angles. As fun as Dragon's Lair is to play, it is also a display piece, so it's great to see it from various points in your arcade and have no discoloration or washout from any angles. Honestly, the picture is superb and easily one of the best looking adaptations of Dragon's Lair I have ever seen. One minor issue I do have with the screen is just how low it is. Due to the inclusion of the awesome alphanumeric screen panel, this pushed the monitor panel down farther, resulting in one of the lowest monitors in the Arcade1Up lineup. If you normally play standing up, get ready to crane your neck because you will be looking down to see. This falls into what I mentioned originally about how the cabinet should have been taller from a functional perspective, as raising the cabinet up to at least the Tron height would have put the screen closer to where it would be traditionally on a standard 1-up cabinet. Moving on to the control panel, and this is where some people will be slightly disappointed who are expecting a 1-to-1 recreation in the 3/4 scale because some modifications with the control deck were done. The original featured a waterfall style deck where the control panel continued over the side onto the front of the kick plate and was also raised up towards the screen. Arcade1Up, however, went with their traditional deck that stops at the screen and does not continue over onto the kick plate, but to make up for that, they continued the control deck graphics onto what would traditionally be the J panel. While not arcade accurate, I think it looks pretty good, but if you do want to go that extra step, there's a waterfall deck mod kit out there from Mod1Up that looks awesome. My buddy P-Dubs did a great review and installation video of it, so I will leave a link to his video and the Mod1Up site to place your order in the description below. If you are sticking with the standard control panel, there isn't a lot to cover here in more ways than one. First of all, these are the same quality buttons and sticks we always get from Arcade1Up, but luckily these aren't the kind of games where that is going to affect gameplay too much. I found the sticks and buttons worked extremely well, and I was able easily to complete all my inputs for the on-screen cues. When I said there wasn't a lot to cover here, that was a bit of a double entendre, as this has to be one of the smallest control panels I have ever seen. I understand that this was due to the limitations left from the angle of the screen, but it is slightly comical to me how little real estate for buttons and sticks and even hand space we have here. As funny as it is to compare control deck size to what we are used to from Arcade1Up, it is to scale with the original size of the arcade control panel, so kudos to Arcade1Up again. One other thing to mention about the control deck is its height, as it's pretty low for an Arcade1Up cabinet and about 4 inches lower than we are used to. Again, I go back to the height of the cab, and for ergonomics the cabinet should have been a few inches taller. Next up is the kick plate, and once again we see that awesome molded coin door. So glad to see that this is the standard with Arcade1Up cabinets right now, as it's the little touches like this that make me a fan of this product and blur the lines between toy and arcade recreation. The one step further I hope they go in the future is actually lighting the coin doors. The riser is super simplistic, with a simple drawing of Dirk standing in the gold, sword up to fight off the dragon on the front, and the rest is black. I don't know how I feel about the art here, as I don't know if I would have had rather them leave it plain or go all out with more of that beautiful Don Bluth art. I know most people's answer is ditch the riser, and maybe that was the right call here. Moving on to the games, because that's what most people care about anyways, and this is truly a Don Bluth legacy cab, as it features all 3 of the games connected in the Dragon's Lair trilogy. Well, sort of, with the original Dragon's Lair, Dragon's Lair 2, The Time Warp, and Space Ace, and all 3 games are super similar and all excellent if you like well-drawn, quick-time event games. The UI for the cabinet looks great, and we do get options for all 3 games, although some are incredibly limited. You will also notice there is no area displayed for leaderboards or online scores, despite that almost being a given at this stage with Arcade1Up. Unfortunately, they opted for no Wi-Fi on this cabinet as a cost-cutting measure to help cover the cost of the alphanumeric screen, which I think is a fair trade-off, but I can't think how cool Wi-Fi would be for leaderboards, and maybe updates. Cough, cough. Dragon's Lair is presented in the correct 3:4 aspect ratio, and the image quality on screen is fantastic, like I mentioned earlier. The gameplay is of course tough because it's arcade accurate, and unlike the iArcade version, I don't have the benefit of the on-screen cues, so it's taking a little longer to figure out what and when I need to press. Of course, it's impossible to cover this without mentioning the uproar in the community about the audio glitch later in the game. I haven't personally experienced this yet because I'm not good enough to get that far, but towards the later levels, the audio goes out of sync with the gameplay and the experience isn't perfect. If you are a diehard fan, you will notice the audio lag and it will bother you, but for people that are a little more casual, I don't know if they would even notice it. Hopefully they will eventually do an update and fix this issue, but to date, no communication from Arcade1Up has indicated they plan to do so. Other than that issue, I am absolutely in love with how this game plays and can't really find any other areas for improvement. Same can be said truly for Dragon's Lair 2, the Time Warp, as it plays just as well as the original Dragon's Lair, but it's somehow harder even though there are on-screen cues. The on-screen cues are arcade accurate and aren't the prettiest, but they do come in handy. Dragon's Lair 2 is also much less random than Dragon's Lair and actually lets you continue from certain checkpoints in the game. Super fun and a great follow-up for when people are tired of dying in Dragon's Lair. Space Ace is the third game and almost had its own standalone version of this cabinet, but sadly the community didn't show enough interest. Space Ace is the same game again essentially, but in a much different setting, as this time we were off to space to experience another epic adventure of a young warrior trying to save a damsel in distress. This game also doesn't have the same randomness that Dragon's Lair 1 did, as all the sequences happen in order. However, unlike Dragon's Lair 2, there are no checkpoints, and if you die during a section, you will be immediately thrust forward into the next section. All three games look beautiful and play to the best of my expectations. Are they arcade accurate? Well, that's a debate really, as I think they are fantastic, but again, the hardcore fans have identified that audio desync later in the first game that may ruin the experience for some, but in my opinion, this is the closest to an arcade accurate experience you will get on a home arcade product, period. So guys, that's my look at the Arcade1Up Dragon's Lair cabinet, and from an aesthetic perspective, they knocked this one out of the park. The extra steps of recreating the authentic form factor, making sure they had the right marquee, and adding the alphanumeric screen made this a must-have for home arcade enthusiasts. Of course, for purists, you're going to be a little disappointed as they didn't accurately recreate the Waterfall deck. When it comes to the gameplay, all the games look and play fantastic, and you will be totally immersed into the experience. However, keep in mind, later in the game, in the original Dragon's Lair, there is that audio desync issue, and there does not seem to be any patch or fix on the horizon. And last but not least, I do wish the cabinet was taller. It would look better, and from an ergonomic perspective, it would play better as the control deck and screen would be a little bit higher. Other than that, I absolutely love this cabinet and would gladly add it to my Arcade1Up Mount Rushmore right next to Star Wars and Tron as the best cabs to date. Anyways guys, let me know in the comments, what do you think of Arcade1Up's Dragon Lair cabinet? Is this something you have bought or would be interested in purchasing? Anyways guys, I just want to say thank you so very much for watching. I truly appreciate it. This is Michael B. the Game Genie, and I'll talk to you guys next time.